I squeezed my Harley between two parked cars, rode onto the sidewalk, and stopped near the old oak tree. All eyes were on me as I kicked down the stand and stepped away from the motorcycle. I took great pleasure in seeing the confusion on their faces. I took off my leather jacket and unbuckled my helmet. I saw Steve rise from the picnic table and head toward me as I was pulling the helmet off my head. I carefully placed it on the handlebars and turned to face him. Holy crap. Eric. Damn, I never thought you'd ride something this sweet, he exclaimed. I was expecting to see you in something like a Honda Civic. We shook hands, and he hugged me. He didn't even try to hide how pleased he was that I had come to his daughter's wedding. He was practically beaming as he turned to the gathered neighbors, friends, and relatives. Hey, everyone. This is the guy who stopped me all those years ago, Steve laughed. I don't know whether to thank him or punch him. If he hadn't talked me out of running from the altar, I'd still be a free man, riding a Harley, drinking beer, and breaking hearts. The only heart that's going to be broken is yours, Steve, and it'll happen every time you see me with Wilbur Reynolds, a defiant female voice said. Steve's wife, Grace, walked up to me slowly, wrapped her arms around my neck, and kissed me on the lips, not quickly, either. She had gained some weight since the wedding day, but she still looked stunning. After having 3 kids and putting on 15 pounds, she hadn't done much to suppress her lingering sensuality. I figured she must be around 42 now, since she was 2 years ahead of me in high school. Eric, you've changed. You look amazing, like you're carved out of steel. I can't wait to see how Eva reacts when she sees you. She deserves to kick herself for the rest of her life, Grace added. What did you do to get so muscular? I always thought accountants were soft, pale, and pudgy. You mean to say, Grace, that I looked like that when I left town 14 months ago? I replied, smiling so she'd know I wasn't upset. I like to think that the soft, chubby Eric Walters is gone for good. I realized I didn't like him any more than I liked my loving wife, so I changed a few things. Hopefully, I buried that fat bastard so deep he'll never resurface. Eric, I had no idea you thought that way about yourself. I always saw you as a content, if somewhat soft, husband and father. I never realized how much you disliked your body back then, Grace admitted. Well, Grace, the truth is, back then I was damn content, and blind as a bat. At least until Eva turned everything upside down, I added. By that time, we had reached the party, and Grace began introducing me to guests I didn't already know. Most of them I remembered, since I was born and raised in this town. I lived here until April of last year. I got plenty of comments about my haircut, my tan, and my new physique. I lost count of how many times I was asked where I lived and what I did for a living. Each time, I tried to answer patiently. I had expected this exact kind of reception when I decided to accept the invitation to the wedding of Steve's daughter. She had just graduated from Penn State and would be teaching 3rd grade at the local elementary school in the fall. Her future husband had just honorably discharged from the Marine Corps after 2 tours in the Middle East. Eva and I were Anne's godparents. It was Becky who insisted I return to my hometown for my goddaughter's wedding. Becky is my brother's wife. She took me under her wing after Eva destroyed my life. Eric, you can't keep ignoring your friends and family. You were Steve's best man and Anne's godfather. You need to be there to take part in the celebration. You need to take your life back and show everyone that you're moving forward. This will be the final step in your healing, she assured me. You'll come back a much happier man. You'll see just how lucky you really are that Eva turned out to be a cheating adulteress, and that you're so much better off without that lying woman. I wanted to believe her, but doubt overwhelmed me. Eva had told me far too often that I was a lousy lover and a pathetic excuse for a man. That she had found a real man, someone who knew how to treat a woman and take care of her, and she wanted me out of her life. And I hadn't even suspected anything was wrong. When she told me she wanted to move in with her lover, I was stunned. The more I thought about it, the more I believed Eva was right. I really was a miserable bastard. The same day Eva told me she was moving in with her lover, I signed the contract to sell our house and quit my job. That probably seemed childish and reckless to most of our friends and relatives, but I had to leave. I was ashamed to look anyone in the eye, knowing they'd be thinking what a weak man I must be. Besides, I hated my job. I was an accountant at a firm with offices all across the eastern part of the country. I moved as far away as I could. The job was damn exhausting and boring. The most exciting week I ever had was when I had to spend a few extra minutes tracking down an accounting error. I had become a soft, middle-aged man with a growing waistline and a receding hairline. I even started reading erotic stories on the internet. And I remembered that it was around that time I began reading a novella about a beautiful, big-busted wife who told her husband she didn't want to be married anymore. He was a great prosecutor, but a lousy lover. Actually, I'm still waiting for new chapters in that saga, the one that began right when my own wife announced she was trading me in for a better model. God, I felt like the damn angel of death from that story, except that guy had sex with women with the biggest breasts in every single chapter. I really needed to be more like that guy. My brother Frank and Becky lived north of Pittsburgh. They owned several gyms and had recently expanded. They had added a large room to each of their 3 fitness centers and started offering martial arts classes, ballroom dancing, and even country-style dance lessons. They took me in without any warning when I showed up on their doorstep at 5 in the morning. Eric, we really do need someone to handle all the financial matters for our company, but it's not enough for a full-time position, Frank added. If you were interested in taking on additional responsibilities, we could bring you on full-time. We're always looking for reliable people. What kind of responsibilities, Frank? I asked suspiciously. You want me to mop the floors and clean the showers? We already have a contract with a cleaning company for that, Becky laughed. Our gyms are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We need trainers. We've started offering country and ballroom dance lessons, as well as martial arts. We were hoping you'd help us with all that. In case you didn't notice, Becky, which seems highly unlikely, I'm not exactly built for strength training or dancing. And, for what it's worth, I probably couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag, I replied somewhat glumly. I can't do that. I'm just looking for an accounting job somewhere. I thought you said you hated that crap, bro. Why waste your life on something you can't stand? Frank asked. Because I know I can do that, Frank. Look at me. I won't be able to help you in the gym. Hell, I haven't even been inside one. I'm just a pudgy, slightly balding guy, I admitted. No one's ever mistaken me for the Terminator. Not yet, Becky replied with a wide smile. You've got the same genes as Frank, and look how I whipped his butt into shape. I'll have you polished up in no time. But the real challenge will be the ballroom dancing. Frank can lift a ton, but he's not exactly the most graceful man I've ever seen. He does a little better with country dancing. Frank teaches dance. I asked skeptically. That's hard to believe, no offense, Frank. None taken, Frank chuckled. I don't actually teach, Eric. I'm just a warm body the ladies use and toss aside when they're done with me. What the hell? Are you some kind of male escort or gigolo? I asked with doubt. In a way, you could say that, Becky laughed. There are lots of single people, men, but especially women, who want to take dance lessons but don't have a partner. Frank, I, and a few of our other staff members fill that need. We make sure our clients have an enjoyable learning experience and someone to partner with. Not to toot my own horn, but I've gotten pretty good at tango and foxtrot. And you expect me to be able and willing to help dancing ladies? Me? A guy with 2 left feet? I can tell you right now, I don't dance. Like you just said, Frank and I come from the same malfunctioning gene pool. Maybe you don't know how to dance yet, Becky laughed, but you'll learn. The most important thing is to make your partner feel special. Show her that you enjoy her company, her smile, her effort, and, when appropriate, her body. It's not just about good social interaction, it's also about proper footwork. That's why our business is thriving. We don't allow or encourage any of our staff to get overly sexual during dance lessons or at the gym. Not that it couldn't happen, but we absolutely won't tolerate our employees being involved in the breakup of any relationships. We also want to keep heartbreak to a minimum, if possible. Our gyms have a reputation, a safe and welcoming atmosphere for couples, singles, and even families. I sat and listened to Frank and Becky, thinking things over. And I had to admit, what they were doing was a lot better than what I had been doing. They were strong, healthy, and looked amazing. Frank was muscular, but not like those guys who look overly bulked up or freakish. Becky was in fantastic shape. No one would ever guess she was pushing 40 and had 2 teenage boys. I decided that no matter how embarrassed I might feel in the gym or on the dance floor, it could never be as bad as when your wife of 20 years tells you you're worthless in bed, and that she has a lover who's so much better than you. "All right, deal," I said. "Just don't say I didn't warn you. You're starting with this flabby mess, though it might not be so easy to get me in shape or teach me to dance without stepping on a whole lot of toes. Eric, I'll make a new man out of you, if you listen to me and follow my plan. It won't be easy, I admit it. Your whole lifestyle will have to change, and you'll spend countless hours working at it. But I promise, you'll love the finished product. Your fat will melt away in no time, and eventually, you'll have the body of a real man. Then you can go back home and pee on Eva's front porch." Becky promised. I wasn't entirely convinced about the sculpting potential of my flab, but peeing on Eva's porch. That sounded pretty great, though highly unlikely. Becky was good at what she did, I was sure of that. But I seriously doubted she had ever worked with a hopeless mess like me. The next 2 months passed in a blur. I was always hungry, always sore, and always too busy to feel sorry for myself. By the time I hit the bed at night, I was nearly unconscious. I had never eaten so many vegetables and fruits in my life. I would have killed for a Big Mac and fries. Becky took measurements of my arms, chest, and waist on the day we began my transformation. Every 2 weeks, she weighed me, took new measurements, and recorded them. She never shared the results with me, and I kept wondering if I was making any progress at all. I had access to the gym scales, and as far as I could tell, my weight hadn't dropped much, for a guy on a cursed rabbit diet. I spent some time organizing the mess of papers and receipts Frank had stuffed into his office. It took a few weeks to get everything in order, but once I had it set up, my accounting duties in the business took only about 8 hours a week. The other 40 or so hours I spent in the gyms. In several of the ballroom areas, there were dance lessons held in the evenings. I was told to be available to dance at each location, ready to partner with any lady who needed someone. Maybe it was because I wasn't as muscular as Frank, but it turned out I picked things up pretty quickly. I wasn't exactly Fred Astaire, but over time I became a reasonably decent dance partner. For some reason, the rope dancing was a bit tricky for me, but I stuck with it and was able to hold my end of the rope after just a couple of months. We danced in one gym on Monday evenings, and on Saturdays we had sessions in 2 other gyms. I started with a morning class in one location, then drove 40 miles to take part in an afternoon session at another. So, 4 dance evenings a week, plus 2 sessions on Saturdays. Then there were the martial arts classes. I wasn't actively participating in those. I helped the instructors set up any props or equipment they were going to use. I played the part of the crazy attacker or gang member who would sneak up on women and children and grab them. And I got my butt kicked for my efforts. I got pretty good at falling without advancing too far into the realm of actual violence. I must have been the most unsuccessful attacker in human history. I never got beyond grabbing my victim by the wrist or arm before I was sent flying. I actually learned a few good moves just by watching, listening, and playing the role of an awkward sexual predator. For the first few months, it felt like I was running a marathon every day. I was exhausted, bone-weary, muscle-sore, and covered in a few bruises. But by the end of the second month, I realized the pain and fatigue were manageable. I even started to look forward to the training sessions. Even more surprising was how well the ballroom dancing was going. In each of the 3 dance classes, I had several ladies insisting on being my partner. In fact, I had to split my time and attention just to keep the peace. I'd love to say they were all hot, single women dying for me to sweep them off their feet and into bed, but that would be an exaggeration. Many of the ladies were older. Most of them were married. Some were a bit on the heavy side. Some were downright unattractive. But they all had my full attention when I danced with them, and they liked that. "Eric, you've got a whole harem of dance partners," Becky remarked one evening after a dance class. "You're more graceful than Frank and treat the women in a way that makes them practically fight for the chance to dance with you." I was careful not to mislead any of my dance partners into thinking I'd be available off the dance floor. That actually made everything much more comfortable for them. They knew there would be no gossip or questions about their virtue, at least not when it came to me. And now, here I am, at my best friend's house, enjoying an outdoor party the evening before his daughter's wedding. Becky had helped me pick out a new suit. I had to admit, it looked pretty good on me. A slightly Western style that seemed to broaden my shoulders and slim my waist. I told Becky as much. "Sometimes you're such a bore, Eric," Becky grumbled, shaking her head. "It's not the damn suit that makes your shoulders and chest look broad and your waist look slim. It's all those hours on the machines and with free weights. It's the hundreds of miles you've covered on the dance floor. You're not as bulky as Frank, but you're in just as good shape as he is. Haven't you noticed how heads turn and people watch when you lift weights or show someone how to use a machine? Eva's going to wet her panties when she sees you." Becky even helped me pick out a couple of nice short-sleeve shirts for casual wear during the festivities. They felt a bit snug, so I asked her about it. "Eric, listen to me. With your new body, a bit snug is exactly how it's supposed to feel. You're not one of those guys who needs to buy shirts 2 sizes too big to hide a belly. Trust me. I want you to wear the blue one when you show up to the party for the first time. You're like a work of art I helped create, and I want to show you off in the best light. You'll wear the suit to the wedding, and this shirt the next day. You won't regret it, I promise." I'd been at the party for about an hour when Eva and that jerk showed up. With them was my daughter, Julie. She had just finished her final year at a good college in California. I'd barely seen her since she moved out there, and even less since I threw my sorry butt to the curb. "Dad. Wow. Where's my father and what have you done with him?" Julie joked, beaming as she gave me a tight hug. "Looks like Aunt Becky's been working her magic on you. Look at your arms and chest, Dad. Your belly's gone, you got a haircut, and you're in shape. I bet the ladies like my dad's new body." Before I could respond to her teasing, Eva stopped in front of me with Gerald DeWitt Jr., a.k.a. the jerk. I had to suppress a grin as I watched Eva take in my new and improved appearance. "Hello, Eric. You look good. We're glad you were finally able to come to terms with the situation and agree to the divorce settlement. Gerald and I have been very fair, and I'm sure you've come to realize that by now. If you'd been more cooperative, we could have settled this all last year." "Well, to hell with Gerald and the horse he rode in on, Eva. I couldn't care less what that jerk thinks or wants. It took some time, but we finally reached an agreement I can live with. Don't try to act like this idiot was generous or thoughtful. He has no say in my divorce. I don't recall seeing him at our wedding, and I sure as hell didn't exchange vows with him, so his opinion doesn't mean a damn thing to me." Julia was still hugging me when I greeted Eva and her lover. I felt her body tense up, and her arms stiffened. She had never heard me speak like that in her life. To be honest, I had never spoken to anyone like that before. I'd always been the type to avoid confrontation. But those days were over, and it felt good to let some of that anger out. Gerald was a big guy. He was probably 3 inches taller and 30 pounds heavier than me. Whether it was because I didn't look the least bit concerned, or because he simply didn't care, Gerald flushed bright red at my words, but didn't make the slightest move to slap me. I just stared at him and smirked. Around that time, Steve walked over and turned me around. It was clear he wanted me to come with him. "Let's grab a beer, Eric," he insisted. "Damn, man. I don't blame you for wanting to smear that jerk into the ground, but this is Ann's wedding, for God's sake." Steve reminded me as we walked toward the beer cooler. "Grace will kick your ass if you ruin anything." "You're right, Steve," I agreed. "I feel a lot better now, and I'll behave, as long as that idiot leaves me alone. No way I'm messing up this weekend. Tell Ann and Grace I'm sorry and that I'll be on my best behavior. Tell her yourself, Eric. Looks like she's headed this way. Someone must have said something to her. I'm just glad I'm not in your shoes. I've got to smooth things over with Eva and the jerk." "Good luck with Grace," Steve called over his shoulder as he hurried off. Grace looked grim as she approached. She took me by the hand and led me away from any potential eavesdroppers. She glanced around and, apparently satisfied that no one could hear what she was about to say, leaned in. "Eric, I understand why you were outrageously rude to Eva and Gerald Jr. Do you feel better after that inappropriate outburst?" Grace asked. "Well, now that you mention it, Grace, I do feel a whole lot better. I know it wasn't the right time or place, and I apologize to you and Ann. I'll keep my emotions in check for the rest of the weekend, I promised." "Glad to hear it, Eric," Grace replied. "However, if that little bastard gives you any trouble at all, do what you have to do and don't worry about anyone else. And can't stand that jerk, and honestly, the highlight of her wedding might just be seeing him get exactly what he deserves from you. There are also rumors floating around that Gerald Jr. isn't too eager to test your sincerity anymore, Eric. You've changed. You went from being a very nice, gentle guy, to a very nice tough guy. And I like it. I did my best to avoid Eva and Gerald for the rest of the party. And introduced me to her Navy man. His name was Jim, and he had the look of someone far more experienced than his age would suggest. Uncle Eric, I heard what you said to Aunt Eva and her idiot boyfriend, or whatever he is, and said. I just want you to know that I've never been prouder of you than I was when I heard that. You've always been too nice, always took way too much crap from people. No offense, Uncle Eric. If that pompous jackass starts any trouble, there'll be a certain Marine close by to help squash the rebellion. My future husband doesn't take crap from anyone either, she added proudly. Soon my daughter Julie took my hand and walked with me. It had been far too long since I'd spent any real time with her, and we used those few minutes to catch up on what we'd missed. Julie, has your mother gained weight? I asked quietly. She looks pretty wide in the rear, and her chest, well, it looks like it's starting to sag. Honestly? Julie smirked. Yesterday she was telling me how she lost 10 pounds since you two split up. She tried to make it sound like Gerald was so good for her that it caused the weight to drop off. Like being around you was ruining her health. I just ignore her stupid comments. I don't see her that often, and I don't want to push her away, even though I've been angry at the way she's treated you for as long as I can remember. You look so much happier, healthier, and more confident than I've ever seen you, Dad. I have to say, I was really surprised at how you went after Mom and Doofus when you greeted them. You've got confidence now. But do you really think you can cash the checks your mouth is writing if Gerald comes after you, Dad? Julie asked. You're looking pretty fit, but he's a big guy. Honestly, I have no idea, Julie. I just knew I had to get it off my chest after that bastard ruined my marriage, I admitted. If he had decided to push things further, I was ready to give it a shot. I've learned there are a lot worse things than getting your butt kicked for standing up for yourself or the people you care about. I just regret not saying more when we split. Well, Dad, maybe it's for the best that you didn't. You were in shock back then, and it took some time to get your self-respect back, but you've done a damn good job. I need to call Aunt Becky and thank her for everything she's done for you. I'm going to be so proud tomorrow when I tell my friends that the hottest guy at the wedding is my dad. Shortly after my conversation with Julie, a slim, attractive woman approached me and introduced herself. I guessed she was around 40, maybe a little younger. She struck up the conversation herself, and we spent the next hour chatting like old friends. Her name was Marcy. She was Grace's cousin, had been divorced for 5 years, and had always dreamed of riding a Harley. I got the distinct impression that when we were done with the Harley, she wouldn't mind taking a ride on something, or someone, else. The party was winding down, and we said our goodbyes to Anne, Jim, Steve, and Grace. I see you met my cousin Marcy, Grace said with a teasing grin. Take good care of her and make sure you're on time for the wedding tomorrow morning, Eric. Save a little energy for the reception, too. I expect you to dance with the mother of the bride, and not just once. I straddled the bike and helped Marcy climb on behind me. I handed her a spare helmet from my saddlebag and had just started putting on mine when I noticed Eva staring at me, mouth wide open. Whether it was the Harley, the woman sitting behind me, or the combination of both, Eva looked completely stunned. Julie stood beside her, grinning from ear to ear. For some reason, that made me smile as I eased the bike between 2 parked cars and rode up the road with Marcy pressed close behind me. I made it to the wedding with a few minutes to spare. Marcy had spent the night with me, but in the morning, I had to take her back to the hotel so she could change and freshen up. I was sitting alone on the bike when I felt her slide into the seat behind me. She had definitely dressed up for the occasion. The wedding went smoothly. Marcy declined to ride with me on the motorcycle to the reception hall but assured me she'd find me once I arrived at the celebration. By the time I got there and found my seat, Marcy was already sitting next to it. I chuckled to myself, women always seem to know how to handle these things. It was hardly a coincidence. Aunt Grace, Marcy's mother, was a dance instructor. As a result, all the women and most of the men in her family were excellent dancers. Once it became clear that I could hold my own on the dance floor, the demand for me became constant. Grace and I pulled off a wickedly sharp foxtrot, and then insisted that I dance with her as well. Marcy even asked the DJ to play a tango and dragged me to the center of the dance floor. We made plenty of mistakes since we'd never practiced together, but everyone loved it and gave us wild applause. Then Grace and Steve became the only couple on the floor, and it was obvious they'd spent some time rehearsing. They were flawless. The best part was that the more I danced and socialized with the ladies, the darker Eva's expression became. She looked like a cat had taken a dump in her oatmeal. She and the jerk danced a few times, but they looked stiff and unnatural, like robots going through the motions. Toward the end of the evening, I felt nature calling and excused myself to use the restroom. When I got there, a maintenance guy was trying to scoop up the aftermath of a disaster caused by an overflowing toilet. He suggested I use the restroom near the locker rooms instead. As is always the case when you really need to pee, it was nearly impossible to find the damn place. I finally stumbled across the women's locker room and saw a door across from it. The faded marks where a sign had once been hung gave me the impression it might be the men's locker room. I opened the door and peeked inside. It was just a large storage closet with various equipment stacked along the far wall. But what really caught my attention was my devoted soon-to-be ex-wife, locked in an intimate embrace with some guy who looked at least 10 years younger than her. He was wearing a golf shirt with a country club logo on it, so I figured he might be part of the golf club staff. Then it occurred to me, I really didn't care. I pulled my phone from my breast pocket and aimed it at the happy couple. Say cheese. I smirked as Eva desperately tried to pull her dress back over her exposed chest. By the time she managed to cover herself, I was already heading back to the reception hall. I was halfway there when it hit me, I still hadn't gone to the restroom. But for some reason, that urge didn't feel quite so urgent anymore. I found Gerald Jr. drinking alone and made a beeline for him. Junior. I called out as I approached him. Take a look at this. That's how Eva found us when she walked into the room. I quickly left Junior, walked over to Marcy, and wrapped my arms around her. Let's say our goodbyes and go for a ride, I suggested. I still laugh when I think about Marcy with her dress hiked up, bunched between us, and her long legs completely bare. I'm sure anyone who saw us riding off the parking lot must have caught a glimpse of her thong, or at the very least, part of her butt, as we sped back to the hotel to change. Wow. Becky exhaled after I finished telling the story of the wedding weekend. You really hit all the bases, Eric. Let's see, you looked fantastic, put Junior in his place, danced like Fred Astaire, had sex with Marcy multiple times, made Eva regret losing such a desirable hunk, earned the respect of your friends and your daughter, saw how fat and unattractive Eva really is, and showed the jerk who stole your wife a photo of his future fiancée with her boobs on full display in the arms of another man. Did I miss anything, you vengeful bastard? Becky. How can you say that? I'm hurt. Look at my phone. Where do you see a camera? My brother Frank reached over, took the phone from my hand, and burst out laughing. That's a damn $5 track phone. It can't take pictures with that thing. I'm not even sure it can make calls. Frank roared, tears in his eyes from laughing. Then how did you get back at Eva? Becky asked. You just told the jerk what you saw and hoped he'd believe you. Let me ask Frank a couple of questions. Frank, would you want to know if the woman you're about to marry had already cheated on you the moment her divorce became final? Would you hate the guy who told you? Hell yes, I'd want to know, and I'd thank the guy who told me. I'd consider him a real friend and be grateful he kept me from making a huge mistake and possibly wasting years of my life on some cheating adulteress. Frank answered, surprisingly fired up. I would have felt the same way, I said. So I just showed that dumb idiot my fancy little track phone and walked away before Eva could reach us. She looked like she was having a heart attack, but it was that damn fool who cheated with my wife that I really wanted to get revenge on, I admitted, grinning at the memory. You sneaky, vindictive bastard. Becky laughed. You didn't say a word to him. You nearly gave Eva a heart attack, but that idiot is still going to marry her, because he doesn't know she was cheating not just with him, but on him too. What a screw-up on his part. Thank you for being with us. And if you're one of those who watches silently, just leave a like, it helps new stories come to light.